It was the kind of town where time moved slow, where everyone waved at stop signs, and Friday night lights meant more than the 6 o'clock news. Nestled in the flat heart of Tornado Alley, the town of Wyndham Springs had lived through its share of storm warnings, power outages, and false alarms. Folks were used to sirens going off without so much as a drop of rain following. Over the years, they'd stopped listening, but not Scout. Scout wasn't born a hero. In fact, no one even wanted him at first. He was a mutt, part shepherd, part who knows what, with one torn ear and eyes like storm clouds. He was left tied to a stop sign just outside the local diner one summer, panting in 100-degree heat. He was half-starved, covered in ticks, and growled at anyone who came near. No one claimed him. Until Walter. Walter Briggs was a man of few words and fewer smiles. A retired meteorologist with a limp from an old farming injury and a heartbreak too deep to talk about. He'd spent 40 years chasing storms across the plains for the National Weather Service. But after his wife passed, Walter disappeared from public life. He shut his front gate, turned off the TV, and mostly just listened to the wind. He didn't want a dog. He sure didn't want a troubled one. But something about Scout changed his mind. Maybe it was the way the dog didn't bark at him, or the way he watched the horizon, silent and still, the same way Walter used to. Either way, he brought Scout home, fed him boiled chicken and rice, and kept his distance. But Scout had other plans. He followed Walter everywhere, to the porch, to the old weather station in the shed, to the corner store for milk. Quiet as a shadow, never straying far, and slowly, without either of them realizing, they began to heal. A year passed. By the spring of the next, Scout had become Wyndham Springs' unofficial greeter. He walked kids to school, circled the park during Little League games, even waited outside church on Sundays. Everyone knew him. Everyone loved him. So when he started acting strangely one Tuesday afternoon in late April, people noticed. He stopped eating, refused to play. He paced the backyard in wide, nervous circles, barking at nothing. Then he began showing up at people's doors, scratching, barking, growling. Walter noticed it first. He sat at his desk that morning, eyes on his aging radar monitor, a relic he never got rid of, and saw a pressure dip. Not big, but strange. Something that shouldn't have been there. Outside, Scout barked once, short and sharp, staring dead east. Walter's hands trembled as he tapped in a few more readings. The radar feed was sluggish. Something was off. Then the screen blinked, just once, and froze. Power flickered. "Scout," Walter whispered. The dog was already moving, down the driveway, toward town. 15 minutes later, the first sirens began to fail. The wind came first, not in gusts or gales, but like a breath held too long, thick, low, and wrong. Scout felt it in his bones. By the time he reached Main Street, the clouds had turned the color of rusted iron, and the air carried that strange metallic scent that only comes before something breaks. At Gracie's diner, the after-school crowd had just begun to shuffle in. Gracie herself, a sharp-tongued widow with a heart bigger than her menu, stepped outside when she heard the barking. Scout had planted himself square in front of her door, hackles up, paws dancing nervously as if urging her inside, then suddenly bolting across the street. She watched, confused, as the dog darted to the post office, the barbershop, then to the elementary school where the custodian was locking up. Barking, spinning, barking again. It was like he was trying to say something. Back at home, Walter was limping toward his truck, an old two-tone Chevy that hadn't seen a highway in years. His blood ran cold. The internet was down. Cell reception was dead. The local radio station looped old gospel music without interruption. Every emergency channel he checked came up blank. Scout was right. Something was coming. He turned the key in the ignition. Nothing. Not a click. Not a hum. The power grid was going. He stepped outside just as the first rumble cracked across the sky, so low it shook the ground beneath his feet. He could see it in the distance now. A wall cloud, massive, boiling, rotating with terrifying grace. Then he saw Scout. The dog was running toward the south end of town, toward the trailer park by the cotton fields. It was 4:37 p.m. when Scout reached the Hernandez family's trailer. The youngest son, Nico, was home alone. His older siblings had gone to football practice. His mother was picking up extra shifts at the nursing home. Scout clawed at the door, barked again. Nico opened it, confused, only for Scout to grab his sleeve in his teeth and tug. Hard. At first, the boy resisted. Then he looked up, just in time to see a line of trees bending backward from the wind. He followed the dog. Scout led him through a drainage tunnel under the road to the foundation of an old stone building, the only place nearby with any structure left to it. He pressed the boy down against the stone and stood over him, body stiff, ears pinned, watching the sky with ancient knowing. Back at the elementary school, janitor Lou Raymond was finishing his last trash run when Scout came flying back, barking like a siren. Lou didn't believe what he was seeing. Wasn't this the Briggs dog? What was he doing here? Then he saw the funnel, coming from the northeast, fast. Scout barked again. This time, Lou didn't hesitate. He threw open the basement doors and rushed inside, calling for anyone nearby. By 5:01 p.m., Scout had reached the church. He scratched at the door so furiously that Pastor Elaine thought someone was trying to break in. She opened it, and the dog pushed past her, barking his way into the nursery, where 4 volunteers were preparing donations for the food bank. Scout let out a growl that stopped everyone cold. Then came the unmistakable sound, the long, low wail of the wind twisting into something unnatural. Elaine knew that sound. Her father had died in a tornado when she was 5. She froze, her hands trembling. Scout barked again, lunging toward the basement steps. That was all it took. Walter was trying to flag down drivers, but most of them dismissed him. "Another false alarm, Briggs," one man called, speeding past. The clouds were darker now. A twister still hadn't touched down, but the funnel loomed, larger, lower, more violent by the second. That's when the power lines sparked and went down. One snapped like a whip, crashing into the asphalt just feet away. The screams began. In the chaos, Walter caught sight of Scout again, bolting toward the nursing home on Maple and 4th. He followed, his heart pounding. Inside, Nurse Carla was already trying to usher elderly patients toward the interior hallway, but some refused to move. Confused, scared, clinging to walkers and oxygen tanks. Scout burst through the sliding doors like a missile, barking so furiously, Carla thought he might attack. Instead, he ran from room to room, nipping at slippers, barking directly at people's faces. Somehow, it worked. One stubborn resident, Mr. Tate, had locked himself in his room. Scout stood outside it and howled, long, loud, mournful, It was the only time anyone in Wyndham Springs ever heard that dog howl. It broke Mr. Tate's stubborn silence like glass. By the time Walter arrived, nearly everyone had been moved. And then, the lights went out. The tornado finally touched down at 5:23 p.m. It carved across Wyndham Springs like a claw through paper. Roofs vanished, cars lifted, silos folded, entire homes cracked in half. But something incredible happened too. Every person Scout had warned survived. The boy in the stone ruins, the janitor and a mother who joined him in the school basement, the volunteers in the church, the elderly in the nursing home, even Gracie, who didn't believe the dog at first but ended up in the freezer with 2 customers, following her gut at the last second. Scout had saved them all, but no one could find him afterward. Not that night, not the next day, not even a week later when the town gathered for cleanup and rebuilding. He was gone. The tornado left behind a wound across Wyndham Springs, a jagged, painful scar of twisted steel, splintered trees, and lives forever changed. But something else settled over the town too, awe, because against every odd, no one had died. Not a single life was lost. As the days unfolded and emergency crews surveyed the damage, the story of what really happened began to piece itself together. Not from the radar, not from government reports, but from whispers between neighbors, shaky phone videos, and the retelling of one consistent name: Scout. The dog who barked at windows, who scratched at doors, who tugged children to safety, who howled outside a locked room and pulled a man from beneath a crumpled garage. Everyone had a Scout story, but no one had seen him since. Walter searched for days, on foot, in his truck once the roads were clear, through woods, fields, and battered barns. He checked with every vet clinic, shelter, and emergency tent set up by FEMA. He called his name into the wind until his voice went hoarse. Nothing. It broke him in ways he couldn't admit. Scout had been more than a dog. He was the last thread of something Walter had thought he'd lost forever. Purpose. Connection. Faith. Still, he didn't give up. 3 weeks later, on a still gray morning, Walter sat on the church steps with his coffee when he heard the soft tap of claws on concrete behind him. He didn't turn right away. Not until he felt the familiar weight of a head pressed gently against his shoulder. Scout was thinner, limping slightly, covered in dust and dried blood, but alive. Walter wept into the dog's fur without shame. That summer, Wyndham Springs rebuilt, faster than anyone expected, and right at the center of it all was Scout. The town didn't crown him a hero with fanfare. It wasn't that kind of place, but murals began to appear, one on the side of the post office, another by the school playground. Kids started leaving milk bones near the church steps, just in case. The mayor tried to give Walter a plaque. He declined. But he let Scout attend the ceremony, collarless and free, sitting quietly by the flagpole as the townspeople clapped with tears in their eyes. Years passed. The sky changed. The town grew. The wounds slowly softened. But every spring, when the clouds darkened and sirens were tested, a hush would fall over Wyndham Springs. And if you listened carefully, somewhere in the distance, you'd hear it. A bark, short, sharp, urgent, and somehow it made everyone feel safe, because they knew Scout was still watching, still listening, still warning, still saving. If this story moved you, let it move someone else too. Subscribe to FurEver. Tide for more true and inspired stories like this one, like the video to show your love for the animals who change our lives. Share it with someone who needs to believe in something good again. And don't stop here. Watch the next story. Because in a world that's often loud with heartbreak, there's still a quiet bark.